Hello and welcome to the anynode and XCAPI video tutorial. While XCAPI is widely used as a flexible and software-based CAPI solution for voice over IP integrations, it does not natively support every SIP provider or protocol variation, particularly when encryption, TLS SRTP, or advanced SIP interop is required. That's where anynode comes in. By introducing anynode as a SIP-to-SIP interface between XCAPI and the external SIP provider, you can connect to SIP trunks not directly supported by XCAPI. Add TLS and SRTP encryption even if XCAPI operates unencrypted. Normalize or adapt SIP signaling and codecs as needed. Simplify complex provider-specific requirements without modifying XCAPI configurations. For certain provider products, this procedure in anynode is required to ensure proper operation and compatibility. This applies in particular to the following Deutsche Telekom offerings: Company Flex SIP Trunk, Cloud PBX, IP-based connections, 1TR114. This guide explains how to configure anynode as a bridge between XCAPI and the voice over IP provider Deutsche Telekom Company Flex SIP Trunk. TE Systems offers free demo versions of XCAPI and anynode, so you can spin up this lab without upfront licensing costs and evaluate every feature before committing. If you are new to anynode, consider watching our tutorial video First Steps with Anynode or our detailed anynode masterclass for guidance. If you are new to XCAPI, consider watching our XCAPI tutorial videos. Prerequisites. You need a working installation of anynode, either licensed or using the free demo version. Access to the anynode frontend is required to complete the configuration steps. Additionally, install XCAPI on the same host as anynode, again, either with a valid production license or the freely available demo license. Ensure that the host system has proper network connectivity to reach the third-party SIP endpoint, e.g., PBX, SBC, or SIP provider, including correct routing and any necessary firewall allowances. Configure XCAPI with Controller Wizard. We will begin with the configuration on the XCAPI side. This section outlines all the necessary steps to prepare and adjust XCAPI settings before moving on to the corresponding configuration in the anynode frontend. By ensuring XCAPI is set up correctly from the start, we establish a stable foundation for seamless integration and optimal communication between systems. Open the XCAPI configuration tool to create the new controller that will be assigned to anynode. If you have just installed XCAPI and are starting it for the first time, the XCAPI controller wizard will launch automatically. The wizard will also appear if no controller is currently configured. To start the XCAPI controller wizard manually, click here to add a controller hyperlink on the main page of the XCAPI configuration tool. The XCAPI controller wizard will guide you through setting up a new voice over IP (VoIP) controller. It also offers a wide selection of pre-configured provider and PBX profiles, making it easier to choose settings that match your environment and speeding up the configuration process. On the first page of the wizard, select PBX or other VoIP system. Click Next to continue. The next dialog displays a list of common voice over IP (VoIP) environments. Selecting one of these will configure XCAPI with a set of near-optimal presets for your chosen environment, reducing the need for manual configuration. If anynode and XCAPI are installed on the same system, it is always recommended to select anynode on localhost. In this case, communication between the two takes place via the loopback address 127.0.0.1. Select the option without on localhost only if anynode and XCAPI are installed on different systems. In this step, select anynode on localhost. Click on Next to continue. In the next to last dialog of the controller wizard, you can assign a meaningful description to the newly created controller. This dialog also lets you define the number of available channels the controller will provide to the VoIP trunk and the CAPI application. Specify the number of simultaneous connections the XCAPI controller should handle when communicating with anynode. Click Next. In the final dialog of the controller wizard, XCAPI will validate the configuration parameters you have entered. If all settings are correct, click Finish to create the new controller. The controller you have just created now appears on the XCAPI overview page. Once all controller-related configurations are complete, save your changes. Save your configuration by clicking the diskette icon. XCAPI is passive and inactive as long as no application accesses it. You must therefore start an application for XCAPI. You can quickly test call functionality with XCAPI using the built-in CAPI test tool, so you can confirm that calls work without a full PBX setup. Anynode, let's get started. When you start Anynode for the first time after installation, you must set up an initial password for the default administrator account. The default username for the administrator account is always anadmin. The initial password must contain a minimum of 8 characters and should not include number sequences like 1, 2, 3, 4 for security reasons. The wizard will inform you during input whether the password is valid. Click Set Password. By agreeing to participate in our user experience improvement program, you can help us improve our product or service. Your feedback will enable us to enhance the overall usability and functionality, making it easier and more enjoyable. Once you have made your decision, select Continue to proceed to the next step. When you launch Anynode's frontend for the first time after installation, you'll automatically be greeted by the Anynode wizard. The Anynode wizard provides a user-friendly interface that leads users through various configuration scenarios step by step. For example, we will establish a connection between XCAPI and a voice over IP provider, including complete routing. The Anynode wizard simplifies the configuration process by providing multiple predefined system profiles for voice over IP providers, PBXs, and other voice over IP systems. It handles the configuration work in just a few minutes. To begin the guided setup, the wizard will lead you through the process. In this example, we will create a relationship between a voice over IP provider and a PBX or voice over IP system. Once you've selected the scenario, click Start and let the Node Interconnection Assistant guide you through the setup tasks. Provider Node. The Node Interconnection Assistant will open. The first node of the selected scenario is for the voice over IP provider. Proceed with Configure to start. The Node Interconnection Assistant offers a comprehensive list of pre-configured provider profiles that include preset settings like the remote SIP domain. In case your provider is not listed, you can still use the other voice over IP provider option. But do keep in mind that this approach may need additional configuration steps. In this example, we use the predefined provider profile for Deutsche Telekom Company Flex SIP trunk instead of the generic provider configuration. Choose Deutsche Telekom Company Flex SIP trunk in the list. Click on Next. When using the predefined Deutsche Telekom Company Flex node in the Anynode Node Interconnection Assistant, the Company Flex node input dialog is displayed. In this step, you must configure the Company Flex SIP trunk. Anynode compiles the p-asserted identity number from the first 2 fields under Number Extension Range. You should enter the end of your range in the 3rd field. The remaining settings can usually be accepted with the default values. Click on Next to continue. Next, you need to configure the network-related controller settings. Specify the IP version if necessary. In our environment, we've chosen the network card that corresponds to the associated IP address for node communication. Select Next to proceed. The Node Interconnection Assistant automatically reserves the port ranges for both UDP, media, and TCP, signaling. This ensures that enough ports are available for around 1,000 simultaneous sessions, without you having to calculate or assign them manually. Click Next. NAT traversal allows traffic to reach its intended destination, even if a device does not have a public IP address. If the selected network card does not utilize an external IP address, it may be necessary to input an external IP address in the node settings. This external IP address will be consistently used by any node in SIP communication when providing its own IP address to the remote party. With Company Flex, NAT configuration is not absolutely necessary because Deutsche Telekom works with latching. Deutsche Telekom automatically recognizes which IP addresses the RTP packets are coming from. Click Next to continue. By setting the remote SIP domain, you can specify where to reach the remote endpoint for outgoing calls. In this case, the remote SIP domain is determined via URI representation. The URI for the Deutsche Telekom Company Flex SIP trunk is already entered automatically by the wizard. No further action is required here. The remaining fields are optional and not required for this example. Click Next to proceed. To authenticate ourselves to the registrar, our provider has given us a username and password. Mark Activate Client Authentication and enter your credentials. Proceed with Next. The registrar URI is now automatically filled in by the wizard. For this provider, you must enter the address of record user part because Deutsche Telekom uses it to authenticate and identify your SIP trunk. This is called Registrierungsrufnummer in the Telekom web portal. The address of record defines the unique SIP identity that the provider expects in register requests. It's important to keep in mind that both the registrar URI and the user part of the address of record may differ from the remote SIP domain and the username used during authentication, and this can vary even among providers. Click Next. For the Deutsche Telekom Company Flex profile, entering a proxy server is required because the provider routes all SIP signaling through specific proxy addresses. This proxy in Company Flex is called Primary Outbound Proxy. This ensures proper registration, authentication, and call routing. In the generic provider profile, a proxy is optional since it can be used with providers that allow direct SIP connections without a fixed proxy. The proxy isn't a fixed hostname. Instead, it is dynamically generated based on your 12-digit Company Flex ID. The primary outbound proxy address is found in the Deutsche Telekom portal. The SIP is automatically inserted. Click Next. You can enter dial string rewritings here. For example, Microsoft Teams direct routing or Zoom phone premise peering generally requires phone numbers to be in the internationalized E164 format. We recommend transferring everything to the internationalized E164 format with a plus sign as an optimal procedure and best practice before routing. Deutsche Telekom Company Flex SIP trunk uses the international E164 number format, so we don't need any rewriting rules here. Hit Next to continue. In our example, we don't need outgoing rewrite rules. Click Next. This input form creates the name for the provider node. This designation of the node name is also used for the routing domain and dashboard entries later on. Use always a unique identifier for the name. The assistant suggests a name for you. You have the flexibility to change the default node name as desired. Here, we will shorten the name suggested by the assistant slightly. Once you have made all the necessary configurations, simply click Finish to proceed. The assistant will provide a summary of the configurations made. Click on Next to proceed with the XCAPI Node setup, Voice over IP system. XCAPI Node. We will continue with the Node Interconnection Assistant setup process that involves the XCAPI Node with its guided setup. Click on Configure. The Node Interconnection Assistant offers a comprehensive list of pre-configured provider profiles that include preset settings like the remote SIP domain. Scroll down and select XCAPI, localhost. Click Next. This input form creates the name for the XCAPI node. This designation of the node name is also used for the routing domain and dashboard entries later on. Use always a unique identifier for the name. The assistant suggests a name for you. You have the flexibility to change the default node name as desired. Once you have made all the necessary configurations, simply click Finish to proceed. Click Next. Routing. An important security feature of any node is used in this case. The destination number, which comes from the provider, is checked each time for the correct route number. Only calls that are really for the route number will be allowed. To configure routing for this setup, select the Use Direct Routing with Prefix Filter option and enter the route number with prefix in E164 number format. This method routes SIP sessions to XCAPI only if the E164 prefix matches. We recommend using direct routing with prefix filter. Anynode selects the route between source and destination after applying incoming dial rules but before applying outgoing dial rules. Once you have ensured that everything is set and all the steps in the assistant are marked with the symbol, click Finish to complete the guided configurations. Commit. Always confirm the inputs using the commit function and take them over to transfer the configuration into the kernel. Please observe the display in the top right corner. A red No in the committed section always indicates that action is required. Simply use commit, and it will change into a green yes. Congratulations, you've completed the configuration without overlooking any important steps. An XCAPI node and a provider node have now been created in the left menu tree. Routing domain. Next, let's look at the routing domain configuration overview. To view the routing domain section, click on Routing Domain in the left menu tree. You will notice that the wizard has already created the desired routes here. The table displays the routes that calls take through any node. No further action is required in our example. The call's origin is on the left, and the destination is on the right. You can modify the route table anytime, as any node processes it sequentially from top to bottom. Dashboard check. Now we will check the overall status of the configuration in the anynode dashboard. To do this, you need to change the configuration mode to monitor mode in the upper right menu, and the anynode dashboard will open. Under SIP nodes, you can check the operating status of all configured nodes. A green status, OK, indicates that everything is working properly. By double-clicking on the node, you can access more detailed information, including the options packets display. The upper value under Received shows that the XCAPI is sending options packets to any node, while the lower value under Sent indicates that any node is sending options packets and receiving a response from XCAPI. You can refresh the values by clicking on Refresh. Test call. After completing the configuration process, it is highly recommended to conduct a test call and start a trace before confirming that all nodes are working correctly and that the chosen route is functioning as expected. Now, switch to configuration mode and click on Tracing in the left menu tree. For quick access to the trace configuration, there is the option of using a shortcut via the trace display. Simply click on Trace in the top right corner. The display there will also indicate whether a trace is currently active. In case of voice over IP network issues, the communication between any node and the remote endpoints are logged into a binary file upon enabling the anynode trace function. This file is then analyzed using the Trace Analyzer tool. It is of particular importance to start the trace at the right time. The beginning of all relevant calls should be included in the trace. In most cases, the default values for the trace settings are sufficient. Click on Activate to enable trace recording. Now, start a test call. Switch to monitor mode in the upper right corner and click on Active Sessions to see all ongoing and completed calls. To conduct an audio quality check, please engage in conversation on both ends of the call for a period of time. Recently disconnected calls are also visible for 5 seconds, allowing immediate visibility of rejected or terminated calls. In this example, we will make a call from the XCAPI to the provider and confirm the proper usage of the route. Additionally, you can view all past calls in the call history section. Now, let's switch to configuration mode again. Click on Tracing in the left menu tree. Stop the trace recording with Deactivate. Then, you download the trace file from the server where any node is installed by using Download Trace File to save the trace to your desired location. To analyze any node trace files, TE Systems provides the Trace Analyzer, a powerful Windows-based tool for analyzing and debugging any node trace files. The anynode Trace Analyzer empowers you to identify causes of problems very quickly, so you can choose whether to resolve it on your own, or alternatively, send in the anynode trace to our technical support. In the Trace Analyzer, select your session and double-click on it. This will provide a concise overview of the SIP message flow for each individual session, displaying information about combined or individual media flow directions. The left side shows the origin of the call, with anynode displayed in the center. The center line represents the call termination. On the right side, a completely new and independent call is established with distinct call IDs and SIP headers. Click on an invite to view specific details about the SIP messages. Click on Audio in the upper menu to view the recorded audio. Use Play to conduct an audio quality check. Congratulations! You successfully configured XCAPI with the SBC anynode. Your dedication and effort have paid off, and now you have a powerful solution in place for seamless communication. Well done, and may your XCAPI and anynode experience be efficient, reliable, and beneficial for your organization.